We're good to go whenever you're good to.
It's great. It's good. That's great stuff. This is going to be excellent.
And welcome back to the Nassauman Hockey Podcast, episode 105. And yes, look at what I'm wearing, John. I know it was the first thing you said when you hopped on, and now we're going to talk about it right away, top of the show.
Being that this is mostly a listening show and not a watching show, we'll describe it to people. Our boy is wearing the Colorado Avalanche jersey.
Yeah,
it looks like an OG one. It has the patches, the foot patches on the.
Yeah, I'm on the bandwagon.
Shoulder.
It's
you're on the bandwagon. Well, who's the jersey? What's the?
It's Peter Forsberg, my all-time favorite player since I could remember lacing up skates.
Well, as kids in the 90s, I think a lot of our favorite players weren't just on our teams. I'm sure that's still the case.
Sure.
Now, but like I had a Dominic Hasek jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a Darius Kasparaitis Pittsburgh Penguins jersey, but because I like Kasparaitis, not because of the Penguins necessarily. Although I did love Johan Hedberg.
Oh, of course.
Those like that 2001 Pittsburgh team.
Yeah.
Maybe probably one of the last good Pittsburgh teams before Crosby, honestly, that eliminated Buffalo that year. Kasparaitis, I think, in overtime. Yeah, I had a whole bunch of, I had like LA Kings jerseys. I had all sorts of, I had oh my God, what a throwback. I had like a Mike Richter Team USA, like the 98 Team USA shirt.
That's really cool.
If there's so much stuff I wish I would have kept. I had the NHL All-Star the World jersey.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I still have some of them. I have my childhood Mighty Ducks jersey.
Oh. I like that.
Yeah, it's the green one, which
I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I also have a random purple one that I got for like $20.
Nice. Eggplant, you mean?
Eggplant, sure. Purple.
That's purple. Like that's the color. Like this is purple.
That's maroon.
Okay, fair.
This is very hard for people that are not seeing. This is not a great start.
Well, I'm wearing the current now home jersey for the Colorado Avalanche. I'm on the bandwagon. The New York Islanders have been officially eliminated, and we will get to that in a little bit. But I decided this morning, I woke up and I was like, you know what? I don't gotta go to work today. It's my off day. What am I gonna wear? Open my closet. I was like, you know what? I haven't worn my Peter Forsberg jersey in a long time. It'll be a good talking point tonight on the show. So.
Wow, it's been a long time that you've been thinking about that.
Yeah, I was thinking about it early this morning as soon as I woke up after the gym and everything, and I showered, and I was like, I got to work today. What am I going to wear? So, yeah, I'm on the bandwagon since the Islanders have officially. Now, before the season, I will say I did anticipate the Islanders making the Stanley Cup. Who did I think they were going to face in the Stanley Cup? I thought it was going to be the Colorado Avalanche all along. So, with that being said, we know who I'm going for in the Stanley Cup. Who are you going for?
It's a great question. I do want, out of the West, I think I do want Colorado to kind of get over that hump. Part of me still has like they just won it, but it was like 20 years ago.
It's a long time.
It's been a long time. So it's not like, they're definitely a recent Cup champion as far as, in the grand scheme of things, but not really.
Yeah.
They were still really good over that time period up until the lockout.
Yeah.
So I'd say Colorado out of the St. Louis eventually got over the hump. I was a big proponent of that team for a long time. I thought they could do it. They finally did it after I kind of gave up on it. And I really cared for the Caps. I thought it was funny that they could never get over the hump. It's all these teams, but I really do want Colorado to kind of find their way. Colorado, Calgary in the West final would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Out of the East, I kind of got to give it up to New Colorado, the Florida Panthers. Now, I don't know how sustainable this is. This year's Bobrovsky's good year, which means next year won't be. So I don't know if next year's, can do it again.
Right.
They likely, who knows if they have Thornton again? Who knows if Drew comes back, who's been on fire
Yeah.
with them so far. But they do have a lot. Huberto's got almost 110 points if he
Yeah,
didn't get there.
I think he's actually up to 105, so maybe
105 something.
106.
It was something like that. So, if I'm going to see a team kind of go and do it, I kind of want Florida out of the East. I don't know who they're going to play because I think it's a really competitive field in the East. I know we just lost to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but you got to give it up to them. They're quite good.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay is going to turn it on in the playoffs.
That's who I hope to see them play.
Yeah, I mean that would be incredible if it works out that way.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to play. Like I think the seeding is still getting sorted out, so you don't know who's going to play who.
Yeah, I'm going to it now. Tampa Bay's in a 3 spot, which means currently they would play Toronto, but they are points wise only 3 points ahead of Boston. So
that's another team. They can absolutely put it together in the playoffs.
Yeah. And then they're 6 points ahead of Washington. So it looks like if Tampa Bay and Florida do meet, it won't be till at least the second or third round.
Maybe a Carolina, Florida. I think either one of those teams would be really exciting. Although Frederick Anderson got hurt recently. Am I making that up?
He's week to week, I think.
So it's not impossible for him to be back, but he's kind of injury prone. So Carolina, Florida would be a nice final in the East if that's able to kind of shake out like that. They wouldn't. They wouldn't as number one seeds like at this moment. Although the Rangers are right on their heels, and they look like to be the only team close enough. Within striking distance anyway to Carolina. And they're currently tied. I think it's just regulation wins right now. That's the difference between Carolina and the Rangers. So that would be interesting. Yeah, obviously don't want to see the Rangers make it very far, just because we're Islander fans, not because we don't think they're good. Wow, their home record is 25-8-4. Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say Florida, Carolina would be exciting.
That would be a good one too. Yeah. What's interesting about that matchup is, you said Freddie Anderson was hurt. It would be interesting to see that matchup just because of the fact that Sergei Bobrovsky's actually been pretty known to not do great in the playoffs, except for that one year we had a phenomenal year. But
is it part of his down year? Is it part of his up year?
Right.
Like it kind of depends on like where he's at. So like, can he sustain now his regular season play into the playoffs?
Yeah, and he's having kind of that. He started off really well for Florida, and then suddenly he was not doing well at all. And now he's kind of just floating in that mediocre area. And Spencer Knight wasn't too great for the Panthers this season. I don't even know if he's up with them right now. I think it's not Montembeault, is it right now with them? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Backup is currently, but I don't know if it is Spencer Knight. Oh, it's Giannis Janssen right now.
Oh, we definitely heard of that person before. That's definitely a name I know.
That's you indicating that you don't know who that is.
1,000%. I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, Giannis Johansson is also there. They're going with a 3 goalie rotation at the moment, at least on the roster. So, yeah, that would be an interesting matchup just because the goaltending would be kind of weak. Antti Ranta would be for Carolina, Florida, Bobrovsky. You never know in the playoffs, but they both score a lot of goals. So, especially Florida, they have the most goals scored in the league. Anthony Duclair recorded his first 30-goal season this year.
How disappointing is that? They took a chance on somebody that had a lot of potential.
I think we were both on that too. We both said that Anthony Duclair would be a good fit here.
I mean, I don't know about fit, but like he could score goals and buy low on somebody for $3 million. They got 30 goals for $3 million.
Yeah,
and they have him for 2 more seasons.
Right.
That's you take that, and he's 26. Like you bet on that. So he's your third line at the end of the day. He might actually be their third line guy for all I know, because they have a pretty deep team.
Yeah.
You take that bet. Like it's the same thing with Parise.
Yeah.
You signed him for $750,000 and you got, what is he at, 16 goals now?
Yeah, I think he's up to 15, 16.
You bet on that.
And
Every time you bet on that.
the thing with Duclair too is he's in that age right now where he fits with the core. So, even though he's only got like a 2 years left with Florida, but it was a good 3-year deal for them. It was a win-win, if it didn't work out, he was only on their short term. If it did, he's scoring you 30 goals a year. So my question is, and I promise we'll get into some sort of pecking order here, and it'll be all mostly Islander related from here on out. But Anthony Duclair, if he signs with the Islanders, is he a 30 goal scorer this year?
No, but the team is more successful. You don't need him to score. I mean, well, if you want to get into some Islander stuff,
we're gonna get into the whole nitty gritty.
Maybe we kind of pause on this because this is one of your points. So we'll add in that question later.
Yeah,
and let's get into some Islander stuff.
Yeah, before we get into the season, before we get into anything that happened in recent history, just want to touch on the passing of Mike Bossie. Happened, between last recording and this. Obviously, a devastating loss. Something that had been kind of, people were talking about before the announcement for a couple of weeks. Actually, there was some conflicting reports, but the Islanders did then confirm just a few days ago that he did pass. It's been a tough year for the Islanders, not just because of the on ice product, but off the ice. First Gene Potvin, Gillies, and now Mike Bossie. So tough loss. You saw the overwhelming support from the fans, the organization, and other organizations such as Montreal and Toronto so far. Sad to see, and we wish the best to the Bossie family.
And if you haven't read his Players Tribune, I know we tweeted it out.
Yeah.
But I would go read. He wrote something in the Players Tribune a number of years ago, and it's quite good. Letter to his younger self. It's very good.
Yeah.
I've reread it a number of times, even before he passed. And you're absolutely right. Just a devastating year for the Islanders family. I think they're all still, like, they're not as young as we think they are, but they're certainly not as old. And some of these players kind of passing in the
only in their 60s,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like
young.
are they, some of these guys, sometimes in their 40s or something, they could still play, like, go for Gillies or, whatever. But it's disappointing when they seem, like they're a little older than my parents. So it's very real. I know lots of people in that age group.
Right.
And you look up to these players. I mean, for a long time, for a lot of fans, we just yearned for the dynasty years. That's, we had the Palfies and, the 2002 playoff run and the Sean Bateses and those kind of players. But really all we had outside of the 93 run was the dynasty. So these guys were just held up. And I think they were all kind of getting their banners raised as going to games when I was growing up. Like, I have the replica banners of some of these players all the way up to, I think, even the newer Al Arbor one. But yeah, it's interesting. And it definitely brings you perspective on this team and the franchise. And I hope this is the last one for a while.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I feel real hard for Butch Goring because he's watching all this unfold from, and he's close to the team right now in the broadcasting booth, and he's forced to talk about these things on screen. I actually remember the night that Gillies passed, watching him try to get through that broadcast. You could see he was holding back tears, he was choking up and stuff. So tough scene, and we hope Butch, health moving forward. He's dealing with that shoulder surgery. I think he's had a couple at this point.
Yeah,
I don't.
he's a little banged up. I
Yeah,
wasn't. I mean, not that I keep up and it's like super public, but maybe there's nothing to keep up on. But yeah, the shoulder surgery that he had, and I mean, yeah, older you get, the harder it is to recover. So,
yeah,
hoping he's back in the booth next year. It was just to kind of slowly kind of right turn out of this a little bit. What did you think of? I know we love Anson Carter. We've talked about that before.
yeah,
But for those that remember, hearing Joe Micheletti again was a trip.
yeah.
It's been a long time.
It really
Not to
has.
mention that he's a little bit of a traitor. Just kidding. But going to the Rangers. But there's been a number of broadcasters over the years that started with the Islanders.
Yeah,
Deb Placey, who's now like does a lot of stuff with the Devils, started with the Islanders back in the day. She was Shannon Hogan, more or less.
yeah,
Islanders have an amazing history of bringing women into into the broadcast part of the on MSG, which is always a really cool thing. That they're kind of on the forefront of that. Probably before a lot of other teams. But yeah, hearing Joe Micheletti was a trip, huh?
yeah. It was interesting. Now when I think of Joe Micheletti and I hear his voice, the first thing I think of is, oh, there's a Ranger game on, and hearing him do the broadcast for the Islander game was definitely interesting because it felt like I wasn't watching them, even though they were.
Do you
on
remember
TV.
him? Do you remember him?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely do. But he probably, how long has it been since he's been?
Oh, really? Like
right.
a really long time.
So
I think he was
very brief.
He wasn't with Brendan, and Brendan's been with the team in a number of years now. So
yeah,
2016, 17, Brendan started.
Yeah,
they were still in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
so something like that. Howie Rose. It was the last call, Game 6 against the Panthers.
It might have been
because then they switched to NBC in the second round.
Yeah, I think it was.
So that was 15-16. So yeah, 16-17 was Brendan, and they have Howie Rose and whoever there was a bunch of people by his side over the years.
Yeah,
before it. So it's definitely been quite a while.
And we've come a long way with broadcasters for the Islanders. We have Shannon Hogan now, and we have AJ Malesko, although I haven't seen her on in quite a while.
She was doing like the intermission, and she's been doing the in between the benches for ESPN or whatever.
But we've been pretty blessed with broadcasters and announcers with, in recent history, it's been really top notch. And I think they even did a feature on the Islanders broadcasting and how good it is. So Islander fans, you are very lucky with who gets the call for most of the games.
Yeah.
And in the playoffs, it was really awesome to hear all of those Brendan Burke calls that he pretty much have made part of history now, Islander history. Game 1 to the Island, all those memorable moments are.
God, that Pittsburgh series was magic.
Yeah, he's really solidified, and he's only doing this a few years for the Islanders now, like at a top level, and he's already like put himself in history. So he's one of the best out there, if not the best, in my opinion. So you're truly all blessed to hear those guys night in and night out. But let's start talking the season. The Islanders have been officially eliminated from Stanley Cup contention. And before we talk about what goes on moving forward or what happened prior, let's hear from Trotz post-game on Sunday night, Easter, about being officially eliminated.
Well, this group's gone, the conference finals for 2 years in a row. They've been mentally challenged from the bubble to the pandemic, no fan, to going real deep, to losing 1-0 in a conference final to the Stanley Cup champions, which was probably one of the toughest series that you talk to. I know Coop real well, and I know a lot of their players, and it was just maybe one of the toughest series they've ever played. And, we went through a lot at the start this year. We just we dug ourselves too big of a hole, and we couldn't dig ourselves out, especially with the number of games. We're playing an extra game or two a week for last number of weeks, and it just it's been hard, but guys will keep pushing. We got 7 more games and some very good opponents, so we're going to have to show up and compete, and they will.
So at the end of that little clip there, he talks about how the guys for the rest of the season will show up and compete. I want to cut that and I want to paste it towards the end of the show. And we're going to talk about some reasons for optimism and some reasons for pessimism. But real quick blanket statement here that we can elaborate on later is, I think that, yes, there's a disappointment in that room, obviously, for obvious reasons. However, Trotz admitted, earlier in that interview, he didn't say anything to the team about being eliminated. They all kind of knew where they were in the standings. They knew how hard it would be to climb back up. But the fact that he said that they're going to come back and compete for the rest of the season, which is 7-8 games at this point, stands true to kind of what Lamoriello was saying after the trade deadline, that the rest of the season is in evaluation. So we have talking points later about reasons for optimism and pessimism, but I thought it was important that on multiple occasions in that post-game interview, Trotz said that they're going to come out for the next 7 games and compete. They're going to give you their all for the next 7 games.
Well, you got to remember, this roster is largely going to come back next season.
Right.
They do need to make some significant moves, not in the number of moves, but in the level of impact that they can provide.
Agree.
And that's where we can stop that part of the conversation for now. But that's why the players in that locker room, between the ears, and that's why I don't think an Aatu Räty should be involved, or a lot of young players should be brought up, because this is the big boy room.
Yeah.
And they need to kind of get through this themselves between the ears and kind of finish the season with confidence, because this is going to be a team that's largely together again next season.
Yeah, I like what you said about Räty, because speaking of which, Aatu Räty has landed in New York. I don't know if you had seen, or if
he was at a baseball game.
He was at a Mets game a couple days ago. So
that's right.
He's here, and that's not by coincidence. He didn't just decide, I'm going to go from Europe to the Mets game then a couple days later.
You can just do that.
Yeah. There's a possibility that he will sign with the Bridgeport Islanders, or not sign, but he'll be sent down to Bridgeport to play with the Bridgeport Islanders. I actually haven't kept up in a couple of days. They are probably somewhere still near trying to get in to the playoffs in the AHL. And I think it would benefit him to play in that lineup if they do end up in the playoffs.
That's what we said last week. Go play meaningful minutes, get your feet wet on North American ice, play consistently.
Yeah.
You don't want to be involved with whatever the big team is going through at the moment. This is very much something they have to do and finish. There's veterans in that room that can teach him something that might not be back next season. Chara might not be back. He has a lot to teach them, about moving forward. I have a feeling that if he retires, he might stick around the team. He might be one of those types of players. And
that happens all the time.
So I think it's one of those things where it's important for them to kind of figure it out on their own. They're going to show up. I don't think you're going to see a significant drop in play. They might not win a bunch of games, but I think you see the effort. I don't think you see the team trying and doing some crazy stuff or bringing up different players or anything like that. They're going to finish it in with the group that they have.
Yeah. So let's talk about what went wrong this season. Say that 3 times fast. Starting with the 13-game road trip. A lot of people had this labeled as their what went wrong. Do you have that labeled on your what went wrong as well? I have thoughts on, was it completely wrong? But you go first.
And I think we said this earlier in the season. I know I wrote about it a bunch. I don't think it was as big of a deal as we all thought it was, especially because it wasn't like it didn't help. Maybe let's start there. It wasn't a good thing that they had this road trip to start the season.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
It's a bit of I think it's an overblown narrative because it wasn't like an 8-game road trip or 7-8 game road trip where they're actually on the road for that period of time, which some teams do to start the season or for a period of time because the circus comes and then monster trucks and then whatever happens at arenas when hockey teams aren't there. Other sports, who knows what those are. So I think they were able to come home is what I'm trying to say. So like they were on the road for 3-4 days and then they were home and they could practice and they had, if it's not the trip. So I think we need to kind of define what that is in its totality. It was inconsistent play to start the season because they'd play a bunch of games and then they'd have off and then they'd go back on the road. So they weren't playing regularly. That schedule in the beginning of the season was, if I'm remembering that correctly, was a little choppy. This is before COVID. So it was a 13-game road trip, not consistent. They were playing 3 games a week for however long, for a month. And they were on the road. Even if they were able to come home in between some stuff and they maybe had 2-day breaks every now and again, that would be preferable. I don't think that's what the schedule was. So I think that had more to do with it than the road trip itself.
Yeah.
The schedule didn't benefit them. They couldn't really get going at any point. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The 13-game road trip, no. I don't really care that they were on the road. Teams can get over that. It's a few more games than normal in one shot. I think under normal circumstances.
I think we just associate the schedule, like you said, with the 13-game road trip. But I think you're 100% right. The schedule is really what hurt the Islanders to start the season. And here's the way I see it, because I was writing an article the other day on Ilya Sorokin, which we will also talk about later, about how the season started. And he actually buoyed, and I wrote about that at the beginning of the season too. He buoyed that road trip through the first 9 games. They went 5-2-2.
Yeah, looking at that schedule again, they played 14th, 16th, then had 3 days off, and then October 19th.
Right.
Then had the 21st, 23rd, 24th. So all of a sudden you're playing a bunch of games in a row, and they had off a week.
Right.
They had off 6 days in between the Golden Knights, who they beat, and the Predators, who they lost in a shootout.
Yeah. So the problem was, like you said, the schedule on the 13-game road trip, because they weren't getting any consistent play to build that chemistry. It would be a bunch of games where it would be like, okay, what the hell is going on the ice? And then come the third period, it's like, okay, it's a 1-goal game. They might squeak one out, or the whole game went and Ilya Sorokin just stole the friggin' show. That's happened on a number of occasions this season. The problem that came about was on that 13-game road trip, because it was so long, there was so much inconsistent play that they never really formed that chemistry. Then
they couldn't get going. And then even into November, there were huge days and days, not 2 days, like more than 3 days.
Oh yeah.
There was a huge
weeks at a time. Literal weeks at a time.
Then the COVID thing happened.
Right. So, and not even that yet. The first thing that happened was, okay, so we got the 13-game road trip out of the way because, and I shouldn't even say out of the way. We're 90% through the 13-game road trip, right? Then what happens? We lose Ryan Pellick, the arguable number 1 defenseman on the team at the time. And that was a major loss because that was supposed to be a 4 to 6 week timeline that wound up being 11 to 12 weeks. He didn't come back until February. He was supposed to come back in like December.
When did he get hurt though?
He got hurt in November, in early to mid-November. And it was a 4 to 6 week timeline. He didn't come back till February. So you lose arguably your number 1 defenseman. And suddenly now, you have Chara and Green out there every day. Plus, you need to figure out, okay, is it going to be Aho? Is Salo going to be able to do this? What's going on here? Who's going to play? And, that was the problem coming into the season, was that they had they had six defensemen, but if anybody got hurt, such as Pellick, things were going to get a little thin on the blue line. Then comes the COVID protocols.
When did
And
that happen? When was
the first game at UBS Arena was the
20th.
It was the 20th. So we lost, where the Islanders lost Anders Lee and Ross Johnston. So Ross Johnston, okay, but they lost Anders Lee.
Just right before the COVID protocol, the Islanders lost 4 games in a row, scoring 4 goals in that time.
There you go.
Leading up to that 20th game on the 20th.
Right.
And there were 4 days between the game on the 16th and the 20th. So the end of their trip and that Calgary game, there was 3 days. In the 16th, they played, in the 20th, they played. So 3 games in between.
In the grand scheme of things, right? They're playing inconsistent hockey. They squeak out a couple of wins because of some sloppy but close games that Sorokin ends up stealing. Now they're coming towards the end of the road trip. They're kind of tired from all the travel and being away from home, and then coming home but not playing, just practicing, and then going back. Bunch of bullshit, if you ask me, is going on. They lose Pellick to injury, and now those last 4 games, they're gonna lose those games because they're on, like, I think it was like 8 days they actually stayed out on a West Coast trip, and they lost those last 4 games going into the home opener at UBS Arena. And sure enough,
they played in Florida to end the trip.
Oh, to end it, right. They stopped in Florida to end it, which we all know
they were in
what
Winnipeg.
Florida is right now.
They were in Winnipeg. To end the trip, they were in Winnipeg. Why am I looking at this right? Yeah, no, they were in Florida, Tampa Bay, New Jersey. They were out west. They were in Winnipeg.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But they were kind of all over the place. That's hard travel.
Right. So all that, like I said before, bullshit is going on, and then they lose Pellick, and then they're losing out at the end of the road trip, and suddenly COVID hits, and you lose Anders Lee, and then Josh Bailey, and all of a sudden the Islanders are trotting out 5 AHL defensemen and Scott Mayfield, and it's like, okay, well, the NHL is going to have to postpone, and they don't. They were forced to play like 3 or 4 games with that defensive corps. And look,
I really don't want to rehash all of this, honestly.
Of course, but this is what went wrong.
No, but look, I've said this before, and I know we disagree on this. Maybe it makes for an interesting podcast. But those 3 things are absolutely things that happened. At the end of this season, when the actual numbers are out and we're looking at the standings, even now they're 15 points behind, right? How many wins is that? 7 wins?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple. Yes, something like that. So you're talking about like an extra win and a half a month. Like, it's not, I think we had this argument before. 13 games, sure. They go 7. Didn't they go 500 on that trip? Or was it something like that?
The road trip?
Yeah. Probably not, because the end of it was terrible. But
yeah, no, I don't know off the top of my head how it ended, but I know through 9 they were 5-2-2. And then whatever happened in those last 3, I mean, they lost. It just depends on if there was overtime losses.
Yeah. However that ended, you're talking about a win and a half, or maybe 2 a month. You're not talking about crazy. You're talking about making sure you win games. They lost to Detroit in OT. That's a point. They lose the really crummy game in December against the Vegas.
Listen,
again, I don't think it's 13 games and it's a Pellick injury and
no,
it's over protocol. Yes, all those things suck. That was for a period of time. After that, though, you got to figure out how to win 2 more games a month. 2 more games. You're not talking about a major lift here. I don't know that any of this is as big of a deal as we're making it. Does it suck? Did it absolutely influence the season? Yes, I totally agree. After that, though, look at the St. Louis Blues a couple of years ago. Dead last. That wasn't even where the Islanders were. You're 2 wins a month.
It's not the same.
It 100% is the same.
No, it's not. All the Blues had. I shouldn't say all the Blues had to do. The Blues were in a situation where they did not have as many injuries or missing players as the Islanders did at that time, and two, they had to go through a coaching change in order to change things around. And Craig Berube wound up, hitting all the right buttons and figuring it out. That's not what was going to happen, and that's still not what's going to happen for the Islanders, because the management and the organization still believes that Barry Trotz is the guy, and I think that's fair, because 75% of the time that he's spent with the Islanders has been successful, and this was a different year. This season was quote unquote normal, but we're not going to really see a normal season until 2022-23, and look, you're right. There is a point where you're a professional hockey team. You got to figure this out, and I get that. However, I also do think that, look, I understand it's a game and a half that you have to win every month more, or 2 games more. We're not asking you to win 10 games more. I see that, but I also think that coming out of all of that wave after wave of losses, and I don't mean losses in games, I mean losing players and injuries, and it was hard to overcome, and it was hard. They're hitting the reset button how many times? Back at square A, reshuffling the lines. There was no chemistry. There was no flow for this team.
I guess I understand. I'm on Hockey Reference, and I'm looking through games that they lost in OT or lost to teams they absolutely should have won. Now I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shootout losses that they absolutely should have had against crummy teams. They shouldn't even made it. That's 5 points right there.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's 1, 2, 3. So that's 6 points. That's 5. So that's 12 points to make up. Now you're 5 points out.
Right.
That's the difference right now. That makes this more interesting heading down the stretch.
Listen,
those
I
are
agree
games.
With you.
Those are games against. Those are losses to the Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, the Philadelphia Flyers, and there's probably more that I'm just kind of skipping over because we're trying to do this as we record. And so that's my problem. Is
I agree with you.
They should be sitting 5 points out with 7 games to go and making it tight at the very least, on top of maybe stealing a game or two.
Which brings us to our next point. There was a lack of scoring this season, and heavily in that first half. The problem here was,
I gotta say, I disagree that's more of a point than the other thing that I'm gonna say. I have something after this. I think as good as Sorokin was, and as good as Varlamov turned out to be, they have a lot of shutouts. They have a lot of 1-goal games where they let in 1 goal. They have an equal amount. I think that their goals against and all this stuff, it's an average. People really need to, and it's also like, there's an equation to do with the goals against and blah, blah, blah. They got like the score run up on them a lot. In their losses, they lost. When they won, they looked like the Islanders. When they lost, they really fucking lost.
Yeah.
And that's why the shutouts mean a lot, because when you get run out the game before 5-0 and you get a shutout the next game, that's 2.5. That's not so bad.
Right.
But what it's inconsistency on defense, and dare I say in net. I don't think that in the net is the problem, because in front of them wasn't playing very good, but it's something, it's perspective. I know Sorokin's being talked about in Islander circles as a Vezina candidate, or at least a nominee, or someone should put him on the ballot or whatever. And I don't totally disagree with that. I don't think he's going to win because the Islanders aren't in the playoffs, but they weren't as in it might be more Varlamov than Sorokin. But Sorokin was in there for some stinkers. And you want to see that corrected up and down the ice. So I don't think it's just the scoring. I think it's the defense in the back end, and you just have to include the goalies in that. I don't think it was their fault, but you have to include them in when you say the back end or just defensive zone play. It's the whole team. They got their asses kicked a lot. They lost to Florida 6-1, Calgary 5-2, Toronto 3-0. That's not good.
No, I agree with you. And I think that, there was that handful of stinkers. You're right. had included this in my article where I think it was at a point in maybe late November, early December. There was like 6 games in a row that they lost where Sorokin, I think, took 4, maybe 5 of them and lost 4 or 5 of them straight, allowing 3+ goals each of those games. He eventually did turn it around. I think it was literally on New Year's Day, was when things started kind of getting better for the Islanders. But no, yeah, you're right. The goaltenders were definitely part of that inconsistencies and everything to start the season. But, you know, given what they had been through to that point, it was almost like, you know, first of all, we went through 2 crazy condensed seasons where we went to back-to-back Eastern Conference finals. We had short summers and you know, like Trot said in that earlier clip we played, yeah, maybe they were a little burnt out, and age is a factor here, you know, in some capacity. You know, the Islanders are spoken about as the quote unquote oldest team in the NHL.
It takes a lot to get as far as they did. If you remember, if you remember the quote from the Oilers, who passed the Islanders locker room following the Islanders sweep of Edmonton in '83 in the final, and Islanders were not celebrating. They were icing themselves. And Edmonton, all of a sudden, they understood what it took.
Yeah.
It's not about and that was the 4th one in a row, right? So they played a hell of a lot of hockey. And they still went to the next one. They still went all the way to the next final.
Yeah.
The next year. So that's when people talk about that 19 playoff series wins in a row, that's a really long, it's really 5 seasons worth, right?
Is. You don't think about that. You think about it being 4 seasons because they won 4 cups, but no, those playoff series, what was it, three afterwards they won.
Yeah, you know, so in that, and they played a decent series against Edmonton. It was just time, and you know they're tired. You know, the Islanders have to kind of, you know, I think this season this is good for them.
Adversity is a good thing, and we'll get there for sure.
Yeah, I think it is a good thing for them. But yeah, they're tired. I mean, I don't know about the age thing. You know, Lee still scored a bunch of goals. Nelson scored a bunch of goals.
Well, right. That's why I said.
And but I don't think it's necessarily there. I don't think age is the problem.
The age thing is there in some capacity, but like I was gonna say, remove a few of those names, Chara, Green. Suddenly, you're not the oldest team anymore. You know, those are heavily outweighing the younger guys on the team because, you know, in terms of average. But, you know, if you pluck those guys out, this team is not as old as everybody thinks it is. And like you said, and we're going to talk about this later, they found their stride. But to stay on the topic of what went wrong, there was a lack of scoring. And yes, there were games where they won early in the season where they scored 4 goals, but I think they averaged something like through January 1st, if I'm not mistaken, 2.3 goals a game. And, you know, Kyle Palmieri didn't score until, you know, he didn't score his 2nd goal until I think January. Zach Parise, same boat. You know, Matthew Barzal, even you wrote about him saying that he needs to find another gear. And we've been saying that about him, Anthony Beauvillier.
I'm saying the Barzal thing, to be clear, was that the team needs to help him turn into a true superstar.
Yes.
That was the point of it. And that's building around him. They need to do that.
I agree with you.
That's the, you know, reasons for optimism or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. But, you know, the thing is, Noah Dobson was like just starting to figure himself out, you know, around December, January. Josh Bailey wasn't scoring. Anthony Beauvillier wasn't scoring. You know, up and down the lineup, nobody was really scoring. Anders Lee wasn't scoring until about, what was it? About January, when he really started to turn it around. And there was that one game, I think he scored his first hat trick. And that was when he was like, yeah, I'm starting to feel, you know, more confident about my knee and it feels good again. And I don't second guess myself out on the ice anymore because I have confidence in my knee. But that was a big problem at the beginning of the season, was the lack of scoring, especially with some of the newcomers like Kyle Palmieri and Zach Parise.
Yeah, again, and we've said this to death, and I maintain that Parise was not brought in to score goals. The fact that he has 15, 16 goals this season is gravy. It turned out to be a giant part of the meal, and it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be drinking gravy to get your calories. But the Islanders were drinking their gravy all season and trying to get and get in the calories.
I have
And
to
that was
say, I don't think I've ever heard that one.
right. It should be the cherry on top, but you can't make the cherry isn't the meal. And they made the cherry the meal, is what I'm trying to say.
I gotcha.
That's the huge part of the problem there. Then Palmieri turns it on a little bit. Peugeot turns it on a little bit. Lee, Nelson. And that's what you want to see that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good depth. Problem is, you had a first line that just could not get going outside of essentially Parise getting fed from Barzal now and again. But yeah, you had a first line that just was a ghost. And turns out Wahlstrom is not the right guy to be there. And I think that creates a little bit of a problem down the lineup in where guys fit in moving forward. I think that's going to be interesting and how they figure that out next season.
It's still early for Wahlstrom. I think we're ahead of ourselves on that one.
I'm not trying to get ahead. He's not a first line guy. Full stop. Not a first line guy. Not right now.
I still think we're ahead. I'm not saying he is, but I'm also saying it's not impossible for him to be.
Yeah, you need to listen though. I'm saying not now and not next season. He's going to grow into that role. I'm not saying he's not ever. I'm saying he is not that guy. Don't make him that guy.
Right.
I think I said that from the beginning of the season. He's too young, and he's going to be playing against who Barzal's playing against, and then he has to learn the game at the speed Barzal plays it. It's fucking impossible.
Yeah.
You're playing against the other team's top defenders or checking line that are gunning for you. You're still trying to learn the NHL game, and then you got to learn it at Barzal's pace and Parise's pace for that matter.
Right.
Not a recipe for success. For as poorly as Palmieri was playing, he just wasn't scoring goals. He wasn't playing bad. They didn't have like a, negative goals for, and it was, or whatever, however that works out. They were shooting. They were getting pucks. They just weren't scoring goals.
Right.
The same thing we said about Wahlstrom and Barzal when they, for that 2-week period where they were decent and it looked like a glimmer of hope. And maybe Wahlstrom can turn around next season. But he is not a first-line player. Frankly,
right now, no.
Depending on what happens, and I wrote this the other day, depending on what happens with Bailey or Pavillier, he may slot in next to Nelson and Lee on the second line.
It's possible.
And Parise, Peugeot, Palmieri. But then you got to find 2 first-line wingers for Barzal. That is real hard. And that leads me to believe that maybe Palmieri gets another shot until you're only finding 1.
Yeah, it's possible.
So there's going to be some gymnastics and some chess moves that Lamoriello is going to have to move to kind of make up for that lack of scoring. That's what we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
I saw Dan Rosen posted that the league, per game average was like 6.3 goals per game for the game. For each team adds up to that, which means per team it's like 3 and change, 3 and a quarter, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 and a little less. The Islanders are at like 2.5. So you're making up like almost 3/4 of a goal per game. That's not easy. That's going to take something from the outside. So your original question by Anthony Duclair, does he score 30 goals? No, he doesn't need to score 30 goals. This team needs to just get above 3 goals per game. You're not talking about a pace like Florida, where he's adding the second or third goal or the 4th goal in the game, or one of 4 or 5 goals a game.
Florida's at 4.19 goals per game.
Yeah.
The Islanders are at 2 3/4.
Yeah. So you got to think it's what I want to know about I want to know the average. And I thought about it earlier. What's the average goals per game for playoff bound teams? That's where the Islanders you're not going to, what went wrong this season is some of it's behind the bench. Some of it is Barry Trotz. You gotta unlock the offense a bit. They cannot, and we've read this from The Athletic to Newsday, whether it was Kurz or Staple. This team understands they're not a run and gun. They're not barn burning. They're not going to win games by scoring a bunch of goals. That's totally fine. But you got to score some fucking goals. And That's kind of the problem. Eventually you do, because look, if they think they're gonna, and I read this I was in writing my article, I went back and looked at some quotes, and like, oh, we can win games 3-0. I'm really sorry to tell you, 2.5 goals a game average is not 3-0. And that means that the other team isn't scoring. So that means your defense has to be locked in, which it really wasn't consistently this season. It was at times on the back of Sorokin, frankly, and Varlamov.
Yeah.
But you didn't get any lack of scoring. Look, Pulock, who was injured, still has not turned it on. Had a terrible year offensively. Dobson's really the only one that was able to kind of turn it on, which is great to see. You love to see it. But yeah, if you think you're going to win games 3-0 or 3-1, it means you need to score 3 goals every night, or at least average that. 2.5, 2.75 is not it. So you're looking at half. That's a lot of goals all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And now you're thinking you're going to add 2, maybe 3 top 6 forwards. That's what you need to do this offseason. Those are the holes in the lineup. Does Anthony Duclair do that? He helps. He's I don't think he scores 30. Sure shit helps.
I want to pause on you have to add 2 to 3 top 6 forwards. First of all, that's not feasible because there's no room. But second of all,
Bailey or Beauvillier are
one's going to go out.
One has to go out. And I think there's some gymnastics to do.
Well, right.
You got to fill in left wing 1 and maybe right wing 1, depending.
It's possible.
And depending on how that shakes out, it's at least one of the members of the second line. So it could be depending on where players go, or if players go, you could be looking at as many as 3 top 6 forwards that you need to replace in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you also have to fill in lefty too. That's a conversation for another episode when the season's officially over. We'll talk about who we think could be on the horizon, who they could go after, yada yada. But they definitely have a need to address in the scoring department. No questions asked. There will be some free agents, or as of right now, available that the Islanders should and will pursue. And if they, for some reason, can't come up with one of those guys, there's a possibility that those quote unquote hockey trades will consist of one of those kinds of guys, as well as defensemen. They need to address that need for lefty too, because and we'll talk about this later. They were finally able to get Pellick and Pellick back together. Dobson took an obvious step forward. Mayfield's going to be a third pairing guy. So really there's 2 spots to fill. You anticipate Robin Salo, and then, X player for lefty too. So we'll see what happens then. And we'll talk about that probably in a couple weeks. Hockey fans, feel the action like never before with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Right now, new customers can bet just $1 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, you can still hit the ice for cold hard cash. New customers can make their first deposit and play free for thousands with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contests. Draft your lineup of 8 skaters and a goalie and rack up the points for goals, assists, saves, and more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, bet just $1 on any NHL team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 years and older, restrictions apply. See show notes in your podcasting app for details. Let's shift over to what went right this season, starting with the young Noah Dobson. On defense, right now he's up to something like 11 goals, 42 assists, I believe. Actually, I think that's the most accurate. 7 games left. He could hit, 45 points. I don't think 50 is likely, but that would be pretty cool. If he did, this is his, if you think about it, people are calling it his sophomore year. It's weird how it works for him because he's technically in his third pro year, had a full season last year and an abbreviated season, or as much of a full year as you could have last season because it was 56 games, and an abbreviated season where he was pretty sheltered in his rookie year. But for him to be a 22-year-old defenseman creeping in on 45, possibly 50 points, he really turned it around after he got benched. And it's important for the Islanders to have guys like Dobson, who they draft, homegrown talent, to really develop. Because when was the last time you could say, or the Islanders could say, that they had a homegrown guy like Dobson developed that way? Strome they missed out on, Niederreiter they missed out on, Josh Hosang they missed out on. So Noah Dobson working was like, okay, finally, like you need that.
I mean, the defense, they've done a good job with that. I like the homegrown talent, right? So that's not the problem. And then you got Devin Taves, who you can take credit for all day, because he's, maybe next season, or maybe the part of this season, he's maybe not an Islander product anymore, but for all intents and purposes, he was, an Islander grown defender. I think you're taking a lot of credit away from Pellick Pulock too, but I understand where Dobson is.
Oh, we're going to talk about Pellick and Pulock for sure.
Right, but I think it's, they still are definitely. Dobson will eventually be or can be a number one defenseman.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what it's interesting that that Dobson had this breakout season. I mean, someone has to score the goals and someone is going to get the assists on them. It wasn't the rest of the defense. The rest of the defense is pretty far well behind Dobson. The next one is Adam Pellick at 28 points. Dobson
we'll talk about, because that's pretty good for him.
It is pretty good for him. But, between those two, and, Pulock was out considerably, who's still, he's right behind. He played 11 less games than Mayfield and has one less point.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on what we think a number one defenseman is. And it might change after this coaching staff leaves. What I mean is, after Trotz and maybe Lamoriello or this administration isn't there, and it's not a defense first mentality, Dobson could be a number one defender. On this type of team, the number one defender is going to be the more defensive thing, the defensive player or pair. It's going to be a Pellick Pulock or just a Pellick.
Okay.
Just because of the nature of the beast. So on this team, it's going to be harder for him to kind of move it. He can outscore all of them. That's not necessarily the role they need the defenseman.
Well,
they need to contribute, but they don't need necessarily someone like to stand out like that. You know what I mean? Like, they just need.
But I mean, by definition, number one defenseman is somebody who's going to do it all around. Now, is he there yet, Dobson? No, but like you said, he will be. And the thing is, if you look at his deployment, he's got the second most minutes at 5-on-5, and he's on power play 1 as the QB. So, and he's killing penalties. So he's all around right now. And I'm not saying he is the number one defenseman, but like I wrote in my article a couple weeks ago, he's trending in that direction, which is good to see. But a lot of people had said, what about Adam Pellick? Isn't he the number one defenseman? Sure, right now. And, he was an all-star this year. He's got 28 points. It's a career high for him. 7 games left. He could hit 30, and, that'd be great. And we did say at the beginning of the season, we started to notice a little bit more of an offensive uptick from Adam Pellick. But we'll talk about Pellick and Pulock in a little bit. Just the fact that Noah Dobson has developed into what he has. I think what's difficult to or understand sometimes is, you look at a lot of these teams around the NHL, and they have these guys come out of nowhere, and they come up to the NHL, and suddenly they just stick, and they're stars. Look at Jordan Kyrou. He came out of nowhere, seemingly shot out of a cannon, and now he's an all-star. Noah Dobson didn't develop in the AHL, and that doesn't happen often for the Islanders. Pellick developed there, Mayfield developed there, Pulock developed there. Not often do they have a player who goes from draft to the NHL. And yeah, the Islanders really developed Dobson, and he, committed to his development as well, and really grew a lot this year. His last couple of games have been iffy. Maybe he knows where he is in the standings, and he's just, maybe a little burnt out, whatever it may be. He hasn't had great games in his own end recently, but I definitely have seen a significant improvement from the beginning of the year, especially before he was benched. So, there's these takes where he's horrific in his own end. I don't think he's horrific. Is he perfect? No, but he's 22. So let's pump the brakes on, oh, he's horrible. He's never going to be a number one defenseman. We don't know that. I don't know that he is going to be, but I also am not going to sit here and say he's not going to be too. So Noah Dobson was definitely one of the bright spots of this season for the Islanders, something they definitely needed for their development, because if he didn't work out, now suddenly you're starting to think, okay, we have 3 spots on defense to fill that we need to make sure happens next season if we want to compete.
Oh yeah, you're totally redoing the D.
It's going to be,
and that's really, really hard to do.
Yeah, not easy.
Then you almost can't keep Mayfield, or maybe he's not a second pair defenseman. So you're in a tough spot because you're like, all right, we're going to put him in a situation where he's not going to succeed.
Yeah.
We're going to move Dobson down to the third pair. He worked with Green, but he can't play forever. Dobson's half Green's age. Like, it's definitely, you wind up having that same situation as they do on offense on D, and that's impossible.
Right.
Lou is going to have to play the chess of his life this offseason.
Yeah.
It's going to be this. I think a lot of people have different opinions on his general managing in Toronto and his ending in New Jersey. So, yes, he won GM of the year. Was it 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
So his legacy it could be trending up, but he's got to fix a lot of stuff this offseason. It's not going to be easy. I think what I wrote the other day was, I think it'll be a domino effect. I don't know that things are going to trickle. I think it'll be a couple things in a row. It'll definitely thread together. I'm not saying like one day after the next, but I think a lot of these things are going to have to happen in close proximity. It was kind of like a couple of years ago. It was like, all right, we need to move this cap space and then we can sign these guys. It's just because things need to kind of move. A lot of pieces need to move in and out.
Yes, no, you're right.
Not easy. So you're going to see some money out. You're going to see some money in. You're going to see some signings, players retained. Things, it's kind of a lot of stuff, and we might not hear any news for a long time because it's a lot of moves. Like, things are contingent on other things.
Sure. True to Lamorello fashion.
In true Lamorello fashion, but quiet because a lot of things need to happen. It's not a very clean affair. So
now I will say that if you do hear something right away, it's because he successfully retrieved a Johnny Gaudreau or a Philip Forsberg. Those are going to be your rare day one of free agency. We found something out. It's just a matter of if that happens. If it's via trade, if it's these quote unquote hockey trades, you're probably right. It's probably going to take, it could be August, and I'm gonna have to run to my keyboard and be like, oh, the Islanders traded for so and so, because it could be one of those things. But you're probably right. This is going to be a long summer for Islander fans, because the season's going to end in April, and people are going to be itching to know what happens. And if we don't know till August, and it's very well possible that we don't know what the team's going to look like going into September until that time. It's going to be a long summer. So
but they need to. It does need to happen sooner than later, because these moves are so big. You need to swing for the fences.
Oh, well, I agree with that.
So I think I wonder if things don't start as early as the draft, but you might not. It might not be the player coming in. It might be someone leaving.
I'll say this.
And they might start the domino.
I'll say this. Those conversations have already started.
Oh, I can believe that.
They started by, heading into the trade deadline. Things are easier to happen in the summer. You start those conversations and they don't work out at the deadline. And some of those can be calculated conversations, knowing that it's not going to happen at the deadline. But, you say to another GM, hey, we'll circle back in the summer. I think we have something here. We'll talk about this when we have more time. Those conversations have definitely started already. A few names that I've heard for possible contention for the Islanders. It's going to be, if these things happen, it'll be surely interesting to see how it works out, because I was shocked to hear a few of the guys that I did hear. But
I mean, he has to, like I said, he has to swing for the fences.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
not going to be.
And these are classic, true to those. These are guys you're not even thinking about.
Yeah, the thing is, they have to land.
Right.
That's kind of the thing here. It's got to be high impact. It can't
Yeah.
be, oh, interesting, this guy. It's got to be like, oh, interesting, this guy. That's gonna work. I didn't think of him, but it's gonna work. Not a, oh, he went, Derek Brassard. Okay, he was good. He was good once.
It's not going to be that kind of summer.
No,
it's not.
It's not. It cannot be. It literally cannot be.
That's why I'm saying it's not going to be.
So they need to make these moves in a kind of a big way.
Yeah. All right. Continuing the trend of what went right this season, we can't go any further without talking about Ilya Sorokin. The article I put out the other day really ran through his season. It was mostly up, and we said earlier he had that one down period. It was like 4 or 5 games. Lost a bunch of them in a row, and his save percentage in that span, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like maybe 900 even, which is kind of impressive. However, it was still not good. The rest of the year, listen, he took them 5-2-2 through 9 games of that road trip, and given where the Islanders are right now, him having a 928 save percentage, a 2.28 goals against average, that's impressive. The Islanders were written off in November. He's got 25 wins, and no, that's not the 35 wins Igor Shesterkin has or Jacob Markstrom, but he's also not playing more recently he is, but he wasn't playing for a little while every single game. There was a 50-50 split for a period of time. Granted, Semyon Varlamov, I don't even think he has double-digit wins yet, and he's currently out with a stomach bug, so I don't even know if he will get that many wins this year. But he, lo and behold, solidified himself as the number 1 goaltender for the New York Islanders moving forward. Game after game, he continues to pull a rabbit out of a hat and save a puck that should have been a sure goal. I have that thing going now where every game I tweet out your daily Ilya Sorokin makes a ridiculous save tweet, and it always is a hit because it just works every game. Sorokin is a true number 1. He's an elite goaltender, and in my opinion, he should be a Vezina nominee. Of course, I don't believe he will actually win. I do believe that Igor Shesterkin had that locked up for a couple months now, but he should at least be put on the ballot. He needs to have some sort of recognition for what he has done, especially for a team that is not going to the postseason. I don't think postseason should be a marker for if a goaltender is a Vezina candidate, but Igor Shesterkin obviously has pulled the New York Rangers to second place in the Metropolitan Division and basically the playoffs on his back.
I mean, I think he put them in a position to succeed every night.
Yeah.
And then the team took it. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Sorokin always, I mean, both goalies really put the team in a position to succeed every single night.
Yeah.
Whether the team in front of them took the opportunity is a different story.
Right.
Both goalies have a goals against average below 3. Sorokin a little more, half a goal more so than Varlamov, but you needed both of them to kind of do that, and it's just a matter of the Islanders were gonna finish on the other side, and that really turned out to be the difference. I think the defense was definitely a problem this year. Varlamov, he's got 9 wins. Sorokin has 25. Talk about 7 wins split between the two. You're talking about a few games each, or even just 5 games for Varlamov getting up, and being a 500 goalie. Being a 500 goalie in 28 games changes the season for them.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep talking about, like, oh, the start to the season, and like you're talking about minuscule numbers at this point, where it's like we're not talking about a lot of games. We're not talking about 13. We're talking about such a small amount that they could have stole, whether that was scoring a few more goals or Varlamov stepping up, you know, whether he was recovering from injury or whatever the case was. But they let him get lit up a bunch.
Yeah, there were a lot of games like that.
So, I mean, despite the, 9-15-2 season that he had, his numbers should probably look more like Sorokin's.
I agree.
Sorokin managed to get the wins. It doesn't mean the team played better in front of him necessarily. They just, he played out of his mind. So the team wins. Like, I don't think Varlamov's numbers are as, an indication of necessarily of whether he played well or not. When you got lit up for 6, yeah, it's not great, between 4 and 6. Yeah, it's going to inflate your numbers a little bit. That's a team thing. That's not a you thing. On the other side, got to steal some games.
Right. And like you said earlier this season, if they're going to run it back, imagine not doing it with these two guys.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So Varlamov being healthy, we saw him the second half of the season really step up. So I'm not afraid of his injury. You run it back for one season, and if not, he's gone anyway.
Right.
You don't want to re-sign him, he's gone. I still think you try to re-sign him for as cheap as you can. He should be your first backup option, and see if you can't get him, well below his $5 million asking price.
Here's $1 million, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. $2-3 million. Sorokin's making $4 million for a couple of years. That's pretty good. $3 million, $7-8 million for your goalies.
Yeah,
that's Bobrovsky makes 10 a season, and this is the first time in years he's been good.
Yeah,
that's fine. I'll pay 8 for both, 7 or 8 for my goalies, knowing it's these two.
It's a two goalie league now. You need both of them.
Can I tell you something crazy? Well, I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
How old is Semyon Varlamov?
34.
How old is Corey Schneider?
34.
Varlamov's 33. Schneider's 35.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy, the difference in their career? Like, I know injuries and a lot of, that really, I'm looking at this now and I'm like, man, that hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I'm so happy that he got the win. Maybe his last NHL win ever.
Yeah.
But man, that hurts my feelings looking at the fact that he's not that old, really.
No, he's not.
Varlamov's 33. They might even be less than 2 years apart. Like, whew, that's tough to look at. It makes me very sad. I don't like that.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, it's not my. Sorokin's 26 already.
He is.
Talk about a window. You got like 6 years, of absolute out of this world goaltending coming up, or longer if you can keep it up.
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not either. So, but yeah, so it's not Varlamov after next season. You figure that out then.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy to not run it back. However expensive, move somebody else, make the money. That's not the problem. The way that Lamoriello made it sound was he's going to move out the money that's not making him money.
Yeah,
Varlamov is not the player that. Now, look, he's recovering from injury. You got to cut him a little bit slack, but when he turned on, He's got good numbers to prove that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it wasn't money all season, but it wasn't no money.
Yeah,
some of these other guys are friggin' no money. And it's inconsistent and it's bad. And they don't have any excuse, frankly. You've been looking out. We've said this a million times. How many Beauvillier breakout season articles are we going to read?
Yeah, well,
you can only write those so many times.
Right.
There's no reason at 24 you shouldn't be lighting it up. 33 points in 72 games.
Yeah,
33. Bailey 37 and 67.
Yeah, and I think Beauvillier just got his first point in like 5 or 6 games on Sunday against Toronto. So, he's again, he continues to be good for those streaks where he goes missing for a while. He'll pile up a bunch of points and, make it look like by the end of the season, look, I scored 40 points, but really it's too inconsistent and too many meaningful games pass you by where you don't contribute. And that's where the problem lies with a guy like Anthony Beauvillier, and you could say the same for Josh Bailey. But we're talking what went right, not what went wrong right now. And we're shifting to the Islanders finally got healthy and the roster finds their game. I want to say this to start. I don't buy the fact that, oh, they had nothing to play for, so it was easy to do. No, that's not what the message is in the locker room. That's not what the message is from management. And in fact, the message from management was shape up or ship out. That was the message. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen, because as of the current state of the Islanders and how it's been for the past few years, nobody wants to leave. That's why everybody re-signs their contracts. They want to stay here. But the message was shape up or ship out. So they found a way to shape up, and we started to see the Islanders in that February mark where really Kyle Palmieri started to find his game, Zach Parise as well. Those guys really started to shape up. JG Pajot started playing well again, and suddenly now you have a couple of guys who, by the end of the season, Palmieri could have close to 20 goals. Zach Parise, same situation. JG Pajot, same situation. Oh, wait, is that your possible third line next season? 20 goals each, 60 goals from the third line. Look.
Yeah, I'm talking like 15 each. And I said that this season. If your third line, if you're expecting 15 goals and they can do that, 15 goals each, that's really good.
Yeah, so
that's
really
good.
Everything was starting to fire on all cylinders at a certain point where Sorokin was playing really well. Palmieri was scoring a lot of goals. Parise's playing outstanding. Some of the Brock Nelson, you can't leave Brock. He might score 40. Anders Lee's creeping in on 30. So things really started to click, and you wanted to see that, and you needed to see that, because again, we talk about constantly that this roster is going to return next season with some adjustments as well. But key pieces like Kyle Palmieri and JG Pajot, you need to see them contributing, because they're going to be here. Zach Parise, you're playing with house money there. He's contributing 15 to 20 goals. Great. On $750,000 a year. Perfect. Love that. But Kyle Palmieri
again.
Sure. Kyle Palmieri and JG Pajot are here for the foreseeable future. So you need those contributions from those guys. Same goes for Anders Lee. Same goes for Brock Nelson. And those are your two leading goal scorers right now. So the Islanders started to look more like themselves down the stretch. And was it quote unquote easy because there was nothing to play for? I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, because I do believe that even though they were out of it for by a long shot, I do believe that they thought if they could string those wins together, they could make it happen.
I think they looked better. They were definitely scoring a little bit, but like February still wasn't great. It was just kind of slightly better. It was a little bit of a continuation.
It was when things started to turn around.
Kinda. I'm just like looking at the into March is kind of when things started to really pick up, and they got some steam. They didn't have a win streak until Columbus, Winnipeg, Anaheim. They won 3 in a row.
Yeah.
They were winning a game, losing 2, winning a game, losing 2 for kind of a while.
Yeah.
Again, it's just never being able to kind of turn it on, not really being able to do it when there were tough games in the schedule. You're kind of like scheduling losses in there, which is disappointing. Because there was a period from the 22nd against Ottawa through the game against the Carolina Hurricanes at the beginning of April, where they have 3 losses in there against Dallas, Boston, and Tampa, and you can almost schedule those in there. And they could have won that game against Dallas, frankly.
Yeah.
But, so 2 of those, that would have been like 10 wins in a row. And again, that's 6 of your points you're looking for down the stretch. And then you drop one, and then you're talking about a couple more shootout wins. Again, we're talking about such a minuscule line here. And I know I keep kind of beating this to death, but I really want to drive it home that it's like
Right.
It was razor thin how many games different needed to go in their favor, or they need like, it was close. Like it
Right.
looks like it's not. It really looks like it's not. And they could finish the season closer. They could make it up a little bit, making it even worse, right? They can only make it. It either gets worse that they really blow it and they're really far out of it, and they even drop below that 9th spot, or they make it worse by making it closer and being like 4 wins and a shootout loss different. That would be just as infuriating as if they suck the rest of the way. Worse.
Which just goes to show you that, you add in the offseason those 1 or 2 top end guys, whether it be on, at forward, on the blue line, or both, that could be the difference. You get your, and it pains me to say this because of how well he's playing right now, but if you get your Vladimir Tarasenko, who can figure out all different kinds of ways to put the puck in the back of the net and do it all on his own, or if you can get your, I don't know, Jacob Chikrin on the blue line, who can really help anchor that top 4, you're suddenly talking about probably you're 10 points higher in the standings, and you're really making it interesting in the East right now. Probably coming down to the wire, maybe even they're on the inside looking out, and that, I mean, that's never a good thing. But they're trying to keep themselves in playoff contention. But
I do want to pause really quickly on Chikrin. I know that's not what we're talking about. Now we can elaborate further on. Do you think he's really the right guy?
There was a time where I thought he was, but that was before Noah Dobson was who he is now. I think that they need another puck mover. But I don't know if it's Chikrin. I don't know who it is right now. I
think it's who balances out. What I wrote the other day was who gives Dobson the latitude to be who he needs to be as far as an offensive defenseman.
So you're
I
talking
don't
about,
think it's a puck mover. I think it's
a Chara in his prime.
Maybe. Think about how well Pulock and Pellick work.
Sure.
Think about even Dobson and Green when they were playing really well together. But think about, a Salo Mayfield, or, something like where you're like, all right, it's an offensive defenseman, more of an offensive thinker, and more of a stay-at-home guy. Who balances out Dobson as a pairing? And just food for thought. Maybe we answered that in a different podcast, but I wrote that the other day where I was like, Chikrin is obviously going to make the team better. I just wonder how you balance it out. Like, does he play with Mayfield and then you're still looking for Dobson? Maybe is that just Green? Is that just how that works out? I don't know if Chikrin Mayfield is a good pair, frankly. I don't know how they would work together, but it's interesting to think about who that might be. And that might be the bigger surprise, is who's going to balance out this back end.
I think the Islanders still have a problem with defensemen who can push the play forward after Noah Dobson.
I don't think that's wrong. Again, what does it look like? It's not, at that point, you're not talking about Dobson's partner. You're talking about who to add to the defense. And I think those are 2 different discussions.
Could be. Yeah, you could be right there. But speaking of the defensemen of the New York Islanders, it finally brings us to Pellick and Pulock, like we said earlier, finally reunited. And that's about when things started to get better for the Islanders. When Pulock came back, he was playing 3rd pair minutes for, I want to say, the first 5 or 6 games, getting acclimated again. Again, that timetable went from 4 to 6 to suddenly 11 to 12 weeks that he was out. So he eased his way in. And then once he was in, I think maybe it was after the All-Star game, after Adam Pellick enjoyed himself. Pellick and Pulock were back together. And you really saw, okay, they need to stay together. Lamoriello, for better for worse, Lamoriello needs to figure out the bottom 4, because Pellick and Pulock together, there might not be another tandem better. And that's not to say that either of them are the best defensemen in the league. Pellick is probably the best defensive defenseman. People like to say Jacob Slavin too. Sure, whatever. Ryan Pulock is an excellent complementary player to Adam Pellick, and they just play so. They shut down in their own end, and suddenly Pellick has this bit of an offensive touch. Ryan Pulock started, collecting a few points recently. Those two together just need to stay together, and the rest needs to sort itself out. But once those two were back together, that was like the turning point for them officially for the Islanders, and you really started seeing an uptick in their play.
Yeah, I think they just need to stick together. They need to be the kind of stalwarts of the back end. I think splitting things up and making things, it just didn't work.
Yeah, no.
And then if anything, it really outlined what needs to change in the offseason.
Yeah.
I think that's something that they need to just own moving forward. If it happens again, that you made a mistake.
Yeah.
I think, you're kind of going back and forth. There's a lot more to complain about than there is good things this season. But part of that, again, behind the bench and a little bit of what I wrote, and I didn't really add in some of the defensive stuff, but like the stubbornness needs to fucking stop. I know he's a really good coach, and when it works, it works. But when it doesn't, it is terrible. And not being so stubborn and just playing these players because whatever reason, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. It's like, look, Wahlstrom had a little bit of an issue this season, right? He was inconsistent.
Sure.
Figure something out. Call somebody up. Make a move. Put someone on waivers. Like, it just seemed like they had understood their fate much earlier than we did. We didn't think it looked good by any stretch, but they were just like, okay, it is what it is this season, and just kind of called it. And we're like, all right, rearrange the deck chairs. The ship's sinking. Just kind of do what you can do and work it out. Like, I think Trotz worked with what he had, but like, because he can't call anybody up. That's not his job.
No, but maybe it was calculated. Maybe, they were trying to see like, okay, we know where we are in the standings. We're still going to try and compete, but we're also, like Lamorello said, going to evaluate our roster. Let's see, what works and what doesn't. And of course, that was before.
I mean, you certainly figured that out. If they did,
sure,
we're in trouble.
But that they knew that before the trade deadline. He didn't need to say it for them to be like, okay, from this point on, we're evaluating. They were evaluating the whole time since they were 20 points out or so on. So they were, just trying to mix and match and say, maybe this will work next season when we're really trying to compete, or maybe this will work next season. It wound up being that, okay, they put back together Pellick, Pulock, Char, Dobson, and that happened to be what worked best. But now they know, next season, listen, maybe you're right. Maybe they do need a guy like Chara to play with Noah Dobson for Dobson to continue to play as well as he is. Does that mean he needs to be as much of a traffic cone as Chara? No, they could find somebody who's younger and more of a top four, maybe even top pairing defenseman who plays kind of like a Chara in his prime, if you will. So in any event, Pellick and Pulock being together is what's best for the Islanders, especially given that they're both on long-term contracts. They have 7 years left together. They should be together for those 7 years and never be taken away from each other, barring injury again. All right, shifting focus into reasons for optimism, reasons for pessimism. Start with whichever you would like. I feel like I know where you're going to go.
No, I think reasons for optimism is Nelson and Lee really, and Pajot and Palmieri really kind of bucking that this team's too old. They don't have any depth. They really just buck that trend.
Yeah.
I think they gave me a lot of confidence for a good foundation and good depth moving forward.
Sure.
Parise as well, knowing that he'll be around next season. The P3 line could be really good. Trying to figure out where some of these other players are going to go on the roster or off the roster. In Wahlstrom, Bailey, and Bavillier. Trying to figure out where everyone's going to fit, if they're going to fit. I don't think Wahlstrom's going to get traded. That's not what I'm saying. But it's a little crowded, and it's very clear they need to add scoring. So people are going to move around. Like, it's going to be a thing. So I think that's going to be interesting, but it kind of proved the problem isn't where we thought. It was some other problems, which is good because they can be rectified. The problems that are there on offense can change. If it was the core, like the slightly older, larger core, that's a problem. If they really didn't work and nothing was working, yeah, we have and Barzal wasn't working with Wallstrom. Yeah, we're super worried. Being that's not the case, Dobson stepping up is a reason for optimism. Pellick and Pulock are still really good.
Of course,
Pulock coming back from injury, I guess expecting him to just be himself is probably not fair. Same thing with Varlamov, who took a minute. So, half the defense or a little bit more, 4 of the players on D will be coming back next season, maybe 4.5, considering Andy Green.
Robin Salo.
Yeah, Robinson. So 5, maybe, all together, and you're looking for 1, depending on how that, kind of shakes out with them. I think pessimism. Well, you go do your optimism piece. We'll jump in with the pessimism together.
All right. So, optimistic that, yes, Brock Nelson finally or surpassed that 30-goal plateau and is, closing in on 40. Anders lead back to 30-goal contention. Looks a lot more like his old self. Paul Mary figured it out. I have faith that the way his season started this year is not going to be the way it starts next year. And you'll see more of that kind of player more consistently throughout the year. Of course, Noah Dobson, Ilya Sorokin, Pellick and Pulock. JG Pageau, he's been showing me down the stretch. Listen, he all of the little things that he contributes have been consistent all season, but down the stretch, he's been finding the score sheet. He had the hat trick. He added a 4th goal the following day. I think he had maybe 5 that week. So all of the supporting cast is still, you could still ice a team that will compete with this supporting cast.
Yeah, like I said, there needs to be some supplementary pieces, and you need to. It is on the Islanders. Barzal needs to do some of his own soul searching, but I think it's mostly on the Islanders as an organization to help turn Barzal into a superstar.
Which brings
he showed last season that he was capable of doing that and took a huge step in the regular season and playoff.
I agree.
It is now on the rest of the team to kind of catch up.
Which brings me to my pessimism. I know, I've said I've heard names. I know that I've said that the targets via free agency will be who they are. Getting it done is a different story. And, the Islanders don't have a ton of pieces to move. And, these hockey trades that Lamoriello speaks of, great. You hope it happens. Will a team bite on an Anthony Beauvillier? Will a team bite on a Josh Bailey?
One of those is a cap dump, and one of those is an asset. I think you need to.
I agree. I agree. And listen, as horrible as it might be to say, the more I think about it, the more I feel like Josh Bailey could be Arizona bound, just because they need players. They have like 2 signed for next season, and they need to, meet the cap floor. So we'll see on that front. But what does Anthony Beauvillier really retrieve you? And you're probably going to have to add to that. Do you use your 1st round pick this year at the draft, or do you use it in a trade?
So is your pessimism just the ability to make the trades?
I think so. And I have like a 50-50 confidence in it. 50% he can do it, 50% he can't. Because, in the past couple of seasons, struck out on Panarin, struck out on Mark Stone.
Well, some of this stuff is they chose to sign somewhere else. That's not
that's not
swinging for it. I think
he couldn't. He tried for Mark Stone. He didn't get him
in a trade.
In a trade,
yeah, and that's fine. The team didn't accept the deal. Here's the thing: I don't like those stories. Either one of those, right? Whether they're trying to sign a free agent or trying to make the trade, and it doesn't work. I want to know he's swinging for the fences. That's
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
Look, the 50%, if that's a matter of can he get it done half of the 25% of it is of the whole thing has nothing to do with him.
It's on the party he's trying to woo. I see what you're saying.
So like, how much is it really on? But he's got to do it. The thing is, if we're not hearing that he's trying, and it doesn't come out ever,
right,
that he really went for it, yeah, you can give him all the shit you want.
Right.
I also agree pretty much with that on the pessimism. You do need to see some players kind of step up next season. I think it's like, if Beauvillier is going to be around, or Bailey, both, who friggin' knows? You need to see way more out of them. I honestly don't. I don't know how the fan base isn't going to lose their mind if Bailey hits the ice next season for the Islanders. Like, I honestly do not understand it's going to be like Snow Must Go 2.0. It's going to be built like, it's going to be nuts, especially if they come out of the gate slow. That is going to be rough. So he needs to kind of figure that out, or it needs to be just buried down the third line.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of those moves is just going to be tough. It's an uphill battle. Even if it was just a first line winger and the second pair of defensemen, that's still difficult.
Yeah,
like that's still, and the fact that it's likely going to be two forwards somewhere in that top six is hard. It's really hard. Now that second winger is a little more doable. You don't know who it's going to be. Could be a crapshoot. Who knows?
I keep thinking of Andre Burakovsky. I really like him playing for the Avs right now.
Could be. It could be anybody on that second line. It's that first one that's going to be. It's got to be more obvious. Right. It has to be an impact move. Said that a million times. Pessimism in general, I think most of it is just, how can Barry Trotz keep the defense, put the same energy into the offense that he does the defense? Because the way that the league is trending, it's just not going to work. You can make it to the conference final in game 6, 7 all you want. And it was amazing. And I give them all the credit in the world for getting there. You lost at 1-0. We're not asking you to score 3 goals a game, Barry. You needed 2.
I wonder
if 2 goals. We're not talking about league average in that game. We're not talking about league average or the series. In that game, you needed 2.
I wonder if he gets a line such as a Marner Matthews type line. I wonder if he finally gets something like that, where it's Barzell and other superstar. If he finally says to himself, okay, now I'm comfortable to let them fly a little bit.
I mean, look at Backstrom and Ovechkin. They were both scoring tons of points. It wasn't like he's not able to do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Some of it's personnel, right? I'll give him the credit that he's working with what he has. The other part is, you got to figure out how to give them some latitude to score a little bit.
Yeah.
You were able to teach Ovechkin defense, and he won a cup, right?
Right.
But you all right. So you did a little backwards. You taught the team defense. Now you need to teach him the offense part. Is he capable of doing that? Is it if it's a personnel thing and they add the players they need to, and it turns itself around? Great. Until then, I have to see it. This is more for me this offseason, more of an off-ice problem than an on-ice thing. This season was what it was. Sure, I can very easily move on from that. It's not a big deal. Teams have down years. Pittsburgh did it in between cups. Tampa Bay had their issues up and down, getting swept in the first round. San Jose's done it. Good teams have done it. Good teams have made their way. Colorado has been up and down in this, and terrible season, came back. Yes, they had a really good core, but the others are built differently. And I don't remember Colorado in the Final Four the last couple of years. So it works for what they have, right? And that, for all intents and purposes, they're the same.
Yeah.
Look how much better Tampa Bay is on paper, and they came within 1 goal. All right. Well, just it works that way. It does not mean the Islanders don't need to add and that they
Correct.
don't have a personnel issue.
Correct.
But some of this is just going to be, being able to bounce back on the ice. But I think a lot of it's going to be from behind the bench and in the box.
Yeah, definitely can get on board with that. But all right, some Islanders related news. Earlier today, we found out that New York Islanders forward Matthew Barzal has been fined $2,500 for quote unquote unsportsmanlike conduct, and I put them in my own personal air quotes there. During last night's game or Sunday night's game against Toronto, we all know what that's about. Matt Barzal did not want Mitch Marner to go back to Toronto. He wanted him to get on the plane and bring him back to Long Island and say, play for us now. Matt Barzal was hugging Mitch Marner. Barzal was on the bench. Marner was on the ice. There was a play on the wall. And Barzal, for some reason or another, kind of just hooked onto him and didn't let him move.
He's grabbing his jersey.
He was just grabbing his jersey. Even Zach Parise, I don't know if you saw the shot. Zach Parise was kind of looking at like the situation, was kind of looked like he was saying to himself, what the hell am I looking at right now? What is going on?
Yeah, it was crazy.
So Barzal was fined $2,500. I think if the refs saw it, which I don't know how they didn't, but I think if the refs saw that in the game and they call him for like a holding minor, there's no fine. To be fined $2,500 for that, I think is a little silly, especially because after the game, I don't know if you saw this, Mitch Marner laughed about it and said, hopefully he gets fined. And sure enough, he did.
I mean, it's a dumb play. I don't know why you do that.
He's frustrated.
It's funny that this is what constitutes a fine, and other things happen, and players are actually getting like super hurt. What a joke of a league sometimes.
Yeah,
most of the time. But yeah, I was came across my feed, threw in the notes.
Yeah, of course. And some good news coming to you guys tonight as you watch the Islander game. You will most likely be hearing Butch Goring once again, because he is expected to return to MSG Networks in the Islanders booth on Tuesday night. My days are all mixed up. We're recording on a Monday for the first time in a while, so I'm all
Well, we have
where am I?
Our upcoming schedule is going to be a little weird.
Yeah, I'm away.
You're out next week. I'm out the week after, so we may be our end of season episode may come a little late.
Yeah, I gotta go celebrate my 1-year wedding anniversary.
You have to.
I have to. Come on.
Didn't you just start working again?
Yeah, but we're off. So.
What do you mean you're off?
Spring break.
This week?
Yeah.
And then you're just taking vacation. You get right back in.
Well, I'm back when we start again. So. I lucked out.
What a life.
Yeah, is what it is. But
somebody's got to live it. May as well be you.
I think that I lucked out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I'm glad it worked out and you're back in the classroom. You're teaching whatever forensics.
Yeah, it's super duper.
Scientist Jay. You wear a lab coat?
Yeah, definitely. I wear a lab coat. Actually, don't laugh. I had to wear those like blue covers you put on your shoes.
Yeah.
Like we did a mock crime scene and I had to put those on. It was kind of funny.
God, is it preschool? Is that what you teach?
Okay, that about wraps it up for today. I want to say thank you to DraftKings. Use that THPN promo code with DraftKings. Thank you to the Hockey Podcast Network. Thank you to Isles Fix It. Of course, thank you to all of you guys, our listeners. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassman Hockey. And you can follow my work at the Fourth Period and John's work at the Hockey Writers. Make sure to check out Isles Fix, an excellent curated Islanders newsletter. And until next time, everybody, let's go Islanders.